In the profound and absolute silence of the interstellar abyss, where the dimensions of space and time stretch into a near-perfect stillness, there exists a cold unimaginable to the human mind. This is the domain of the great dark, the vast, empty stage between the stars, a realm where the light of our own sun is not a source of warmth, but merely another star in a tapestry of countless, indifferent fires. Here, heat is a foreign concept, a distant memory of a hearth long extinguished, and the laws of physics crystallize into their most fundamental and unforgiving forms. In this perfect stasis, where change occurs over eons rather than moments, something is stirring, something that by all accounts should not be. Imagine a wanderer, a solitary monolith of ice and rock, larger than any mountain humanity has ever named, gliding silently through this cosmic ocean. It has been traveling for millions, perhaps billions of years, a relic from the birth of a solar system that is not our own. It is a time capsule, its core holding the primordial secrets of its distant home. And as it drifts through the frigid twilight of our outer solar system, in a region far beyond the life-giving warmth of the sun, this ancient traveler is doing something utterly impossible. It is exhaling. Not the fleeting metabolic breath of a living thing, but a vast, silent, and continuous exhalation of vapor into the void. This act is not a gentle sigh. It is a torrent, a prodigious outpouring of matter into the vacuum, and the substance it releases, the very molecule that forms this ghostly nebula around it, is the most familiar and yet, in this context, the most perplexing of all: water. This single, observed fact represents a quiet but profound rebellion against the cosmos as we have written it. In this realm of near absolute zero, water should be frozen into a state of crystalline permanence, as inert and unchanging as the fabric of space itself. The ice on this wanderer, and on any object at such a staggering distance from a star, should be locked in a deep, unbreakable slumber, a cryogenic stasis from which only the close and fiery embrace of a sun could ever hope to wake it. Finding this process here is like stumbling upon a great fire burning on the floor of the deepest ocean, an event that tears at the very logic of its environment. This is not a faint wisp, a minor anomaly that can be dismissed as an instrumental error. It is a spectacle of immense power, unfolding in a theater of absolute silence, a cosmic mystery that announced itself not with a sound, but with a simple, undeniable glow against the darkness. This mountain of ice is awake when it should be sleeping. It is breathing when it should be holding its breath for eternity. And this single, impossible act, observed from hundreds of millions of kilometers away, serves as the opening line in a story that challenges our most basic assumptions about how worlds are born, and what rules govern the myriad objects that drift in the eternal darkness between the stars. This impossible breath is the heart of the paradox, the central enigma around which this entire cosmic story revolves. For a comet to awaken, it must be summoned by the Sunday. Think of our solar system's comets as deep-sea creatures of the void, hibernating in the crushing cold and darkness of the outer abyss, a region we call the Oort cloud. They are time-locked relics, pristine samples from the dawn of our own solar system, composed of water, ice, frozen gases, dust, and rock, the very building blocks of planets. In their native environment, they are inert, dormant, indistinguishable from the countless asteroids that share their silent orbits. For these objects, there is only one call to action, one signal powerful enough to stir them from their multi-billion-year slumber: the increasing warmth of solar radiation. As a comet's long elliptical journey carries it inward toward the heart of the solar system, it eventually crosses a critical, invisible boundary. This threshold is known to astronomers as the frost line or the snow line. It is not a physical barrier, but a frontier of temperature. It marks the distance from the sun at which the surface of a celestial body becomes warm enough for its ice to undergo a magical transformation known as sublimation, the process of turning directly from a solid into a gas, bypassing the liquid state entirely. As the sun's energy touches the comet's nucleus, the ancient ices begin to fizz and steam, erupting from the surface and enshrouding the solid core in a vast, glowing cloud of gas and dust called a coma. This is the moment a comet truly comes alive. This ethereal atmosphere, pushed back by the solar wind and the pressure of sunlight itself, is what forms the iconic, magnificent tail that can stretch for millions of kilometers across the sky. The frost line, then, is the rule. It is the fundamental law of cometary behavior, observed and confirmed time and time again. It dictates that activity is a function of proximity to a star. But this visitor, this traveler from an unknown shore, it obeys a different law. It began its spectacular display not within the relatively temperate zone of the inner solar system, not even near the frost line where Jupiter orbits, but far out in the desolate, frigid expanse beyond the path of Saturn. In that realm, the sun is not a blazing star, but a distant, brilliant point of light, its warming influence reduced to a mere whisper. The energy reaching an object there is hundreds of times weaker than what we experience on Earth. It is an environment where temperatures plummet to depths that make Earth's polar winters seem like a summer's day. At such a distance, the sun's faint energy should be utterly insufficient to trigger sublimation on this scale. The water ice on its surface should remain resolutely solid, a prisoner of the cold, and yet the data is unequivocal. It is not just active, it is prodigiously active, releasing a torrent of water vapor that would be impressive for a comet much, much closer to the Sunday. The core question, therefore, transcends simple observation and becomes a profound inquiry into cause. If the sun is not the direct engine driving this impossible activity, then what is? The paradox forces us to confront unsettling possibilities. Does this object harbor some internal heat source, a radioactive core, or a chemical process that generates its own warmth, turning it into a self-powered geological engine? Or perhaps its composition is so alien, so fundamentally different from the comets of our own system that its materials vaporize at temperatures far lower than we believed possible? Or, in the most humbling alternative, could it be that our understanding of physics itself, the very mechanics of how ice behaves in the vacuum of space under faint light, is incomplete? This is no longer just a question about a single peculiar object. Because this comet is an emissary, its strange behavior is not a local anomaly. It is a piece of evidence delivered from another star system. The rules it is breaking are our rules. The physics it seems to defy is our physics. And its continued, inexplicable activity as it journeys through our home is a silent testament to the fact that the universe is not a single, uniform text, but a grand library of cosmic narratives, each written with its own unique syntax and governed by its own local conditions. The true mystery of this object isn't just what it's doing, but what its actions tell us about the place it came from. What kind of stellar nursery forges worlds that can breathe in the dark? This is not a comet born of our sun, a long-lost member of our own celestial family returning from the frigid outer darkness. Its trajectory, its velocity, and its alien chemistry all point to an undeniable and awe-inspiring truth. This wanderer is not one of our own. It is an exile, or perhaps a pilgrim, from another star system. It is a true interstellar object, a foreigner to these shores. In the methodical and meticulous ledgers of astronomy, we have given it a name to anchor its profound strangeness in our understanding. 3. I divided by Atlas. The name itself is a story. The I stands for interstellar, a simple letter for an almost unimaginable concept. The 3 signifies that in the entire history of humanity's gaze toward the heavens, this is only the 3rd such confirmed visitor from the gulf between the stars. The first, a strange, cigar-shaped enigma named Oumuamua, tumbled past us without revealing its secrets. The second, a more conventional comet named 2I, divided by Borisov, gave us our first taste of extraterrestrial chemistry. But this 3rd visitor, Atlas, is proving to be the most profound and perplexing of all. The final part of its name, Atlas, honors the terrestrial alert system that first detected its faint signature, a robotic guardian designed to watch for threats from within our solar system, which ironically became the sentinel that spotted this messenger from a world light years away. To grasp the significance of this is to recalibrate our perspective on the cosmos. This object is more than a celestial curiosity. It is a geological ambassador, dispatched not by a conscious will, but by the chaotic and elegant dance of galactic gravity. It was likely ejected from its home system in a violent gravitational encounter, perhaps flung out by a giant planet in the turbulent, early days of its formation. Since that distant moment, it has journeyed through the absolute void, a ship with no crew, sailing on the silent currents of space-time for a duration that dwarfs human history. It has witnessed the birth and death of stars we will never see, and it carries within its frozen heart a pristine, unaltered record of the environment in which it was born. And this is the key that unlocks the deeper mystery. The reason its behavior seems to shatter our established rules is because those rules were written here, in our solar system, based on the materials and conditions present at our own genesis. We have been reading from a single book, assuming it was the universal text. 3I divided by Atlas has arrived as a page torn from an entirely different volume. The message it carries is that the processes of planetary formation are not monolithic. The specific blend of elements, the temperatures, the pressures, the very architecture of a nascent solar system can vary dramatically from one star to another. The impossible breadth of 3I divided by Atlas is not necessarily a violation of universal physics, but rather the natural expression of a physics born from a different set of circumstances. It speaks of a place where, perhaps, the chemistry of the primordial nebula was so fundamentally different that it produced ices with entirely new properties. It whispers of a star whose light and energy sculpted its children in a way our sun did not. This strange visitor, therefore, forces us to confront the beautiful and humbling notion that our understanding of the universe is inherently local, parochial even. In its silent, ghostly passage, 3I divided by Atlas is not just a comet. It is a Rosetta Stone from another star, challenging us to decipher a language we did not know existed. And the story it has to tell, encoded in the spectral light of its impossible exhalation, might just contain a new chapter in the grand narrative of how habitable worlds, and perhaps even life itself, can come to be. To truly begin to comprehend this visitor, we must first perform the most human of acts in the face of the unknown. We must give it a name. For a name is not merely a label. It is a framework, a vessel into which we pour our observations, our questions, and our nascent understanding. It is the first step in transforming an anomaly into a subject of inquiry, a mystery into a story. In the quiet, methodical language of celestial cartography, this emissary has been designated 3I divided by Atlas. And within this seemingly simple name lies a profound narrative of discovery and context. Let us begin with the heart of its identity, the letter I. This single vowel stands for interstellar, a word so vast in its implications that it risks losing its meaning through casual use. To be interstellar is to be utterly alien. It means this object is not a distant cousin from the cold fringes of our own solar system, but a creature of a completely different ecology, a native of another star's dominion. Its very substance, the specific ratio of elements and isotopes frozen within its core, was drawn from a different primordial cloud of gas and dust than the one that gave birth to our Earth, to Mars, to Jupiter, and to ourselves. It is a piece of a foreign land, and its arrival in our celestial harbour is as significant as the first time an islander, who believed their shore was the entire world, witnessed a ship arrive from over the horizon, carrying people with a different language, different tools, and different stories of their origin. And then there is the number 3. This is not an arbitrary digit. It places our visitor in a lineage, a sequence of discovery that has been slowly unfolding, each step fundamentally altering our perception of the galaxy's interconnectedness. The 1 belonged to Oumuamua, a name that means scout from the distant past in Hawaiian. It was the first, a fleeting, ghostly whisper. It tumbled through our system with a bizarre, elongated shape, showing no cometary tail and moving in a way that defied simple gravitational explanation. It was a true enigma, a question mark that sped past us too quickly to be answered, leaving behind a wake of speculation and wonder. It taught us that the interstellar ocean was not empty, that objects did indeed cross the Great Divide. Following it was 2I divided by Borisov. This second visitor was, in many ways, a comfort. It looked like a comet. It behaved like a comet, releasing a familiar cloud of gas and dust as it neared our Sunday. Its chemistry, while distinct, was not radically alien. Borisov was a reassurance. It suggested that the fundamental building blocks of solar systems might be more universal than we thought. It was a familiar paragraph in a language we could mostly understand. And now we have 3I divided by Atlas. It is the third chapter, and it is here that the narrative takes a sharp, unpredictable turn. It is neither the silent, baffling puzzle of the first, nor the comforting familiarity of the second. It is something new. It possesses the clear, active nature of a comet like Borisov, but it performs this activity in a way that is utterly alien, under conditions that should render it inert. It is the beginning of a complex, challenging sentence in the cosmic language, the one that tells us the rules we thought we understood are merely local bylaws. It shatters the nascent pattern, and in doing so reveals the true, unconstrained diversity of the galaxy. Finally, we have the name Atlas. This is not a mythological reference, but an acronym for the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. It is a network of robotic telescopes, a vigilant, tireless guardian built by humanity for a very specific and somewhat anxious purpose: to scan the skies for any asteroids or comets from within our own solar system that might pose a threat to Earth. Its gaze is programmed to be inward, to be defensive. And here lies a beautiful and profound irony. In the process of watching for dangers from our known neighbors, this system caught the first faint photons of a messenger from an unknown distant world. The tool we designed to protect our existence from a catastrophic impact became the instrument that delivered a profound, intellectual impact on our understanding. It's a quiet testament to the nature of discovery. Often the most extraordinary findings are not made by looking for them directly, but by simply looking. When we build eyes to scan the darkness, we can never be certain of what they will find. So, this is 3I divided by Atlas, the third interstellar visitor, discovered by a system meant to look for something else entirely. It is a solitary traveler, an exile from its own genesis, carrying the chemical fingerprint of its birthplace. Its journey has been one of unimaginable loneliness and duration, a silent pilgrimage through the cold and the dark for a span of time that makes the whole of human civilization seem like a fleeting moment. It is a time capsule of perfect fidelity, its message preserved by the near absolute zero of the interstellar void, a message that it is now, impossibly, beginning to exhale as it graces our home with its brief and mysterious presence. To fully appreciate the profound heresy of 3I divided by Atlas, we must first step away from it. We must leave this strange emissary in the silent theater of our thoughts and turn our gaze back home, to the familiar actors and the well-rehearsed play that is our own solar system. To understand the rule breaker, we must first become masters of the rules. For centuries, we have studied the celestial wanderers born of our own sun, the comets that trace their elegant, looping paths through our skies. We have learned their habits, deciphered their language, and from this long and patient observation we have written their biography. The story of a comet, as we know it, is a story of slumber and violent awakening, a drama in 2 acts governed by one unwavering principle: proximity to fire. Let us journey to the place where our comets are born. Imagine a realm so vast it defies conventional mapping, a spherical shell of icy bodies enveloping our entire solar system like a great ghostly halo. This is the Oort cloud, the deepest, coldest, and darkest of celestial kingdoms. It is a place of almost perfect stasis. Here, trillions of primordial objects, the leftover building materials from the formation of our planets 4.5 billion years ago, drift in an eternal, slow-motion dance. They are not merely dirty snowballs, as the common analogy suggests. They are the archives of creation. Each one is a pristine time capsule, its core containing the exact chemical recipe of the solar nebula from which all we know emerged. In this unfathomably cold domain, with temperatures hovering just a few degrees above absolute zero, these objects are in a state of deep cryosleep. They are geologically, chemically, and physically inert. The water within them is not just ice, it is a form of ice as hard and as permanent as rock. The frozen gases like carbon dioxide and methane are locked in a crystalline prison. For a comet in the Oort cloud, time itself has almost no meaning. It is a sleeping god of the outer dark, waiting for a call that may never come. But occasionally, a faint gravitational whisper disrupts this perfect tranquility. It could be the gentle pull of a passing star, a subtle nudge from the tide of the galaxy itself, or a chaotic jostle from a neighboring object. This tiny perturbation is enough to dislodge one of these sleeping worlds from its stable orbit and send it on a new trajectory. A long, slow, inexorable fall toward the distant, brilliant point of light that is our Sunday. This journey can take millions of years. For almost the entirety of this pilgrimage, the comet remains dormant, a dark and silent traveler crossing the orbits of Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn. It is still in the realm of profound cold, where the sun's influence is too feeble to stir its frozen heart. But as it continues its inward plunge, it approaches a critical, invisible frontier. This is the boundary we call the frost line. It is not a place, but a condition. It is the specific distance from the sun where the ambient temperature, driven by solar radiation, rises just enough to work its magic on the surface of the wandering ice world. Think of it as a cosmic tripwire stretched across the solar system, somewhere out beyond the orbit of Mars. When the comet crosses this line, the ancient laws of physics are invoked. The sun's energy, no longer a faint glimmer but a tangible warmth, begins to strike the nucleus with enough force to agitate its molecules. The ice, which has been solid for billions of years, can no longer maintain its rigid structure. It begins to sublimate. This is the moment of awakening. The surface of the comet begins to hiss and steam, not with heat that you could feel, but with a silent, gaseous exhalation into the perfect vacuum of space. Jets of water vapor and other frozen gases, trapped since the dawn of time, burst forth from cracks and fissures, carrying with them vast quantities of dust and rock. This erupting material does not simply dissipate. It forms a huge, glowing atmosphere around the solid nucleus. This is the coma, a temporary world of gas and dust that can swell to become larger than a planet. This is what we see from Earth, the transformation of a dark, inert rock into a luminous celestial spectre. And from this glowing head, the iconic tales are born, sculpted by the two constant forces emanating from the Sunday. The first is the solar wind, a relentless stream of charged particles flowing outward from the sun's corona. This wind sweeps up the now gaseous ionized molecules from the coma and pushes them directly away from the sun, forming a long, straight, and often blue-glowing ion tail. The second force is subtler, but just as powerful. The pressure of sunlight itself. Photons, though massless, carry momentum. The unending stream of sunlight acts like a gentle but persistent breeze, pushing the larger, solid dust particles out of the coma. Because these particles are heavier and move more slowly, they lag behind in the comet's orbit, forming a broad, curved, and yellowish-white dust tail. This is the rulebook. This is the established, reliable, and beautifully logical doctrine of cometary life. Slumber in the cold, awakening near the frost line, the birth of a coma, the formation of two tails pointing away from the Sunday. Every comet we have ever studied from our own solar system has, in its own way, followed this script. It is the foundational law upon which our understanding is built. It is a predictable and elegant dance between ice and fire, choreographed by the immutable laws of gravity and thermodynamics. And it is this very law, this entire, carefully constructed edifice of knowledge, that 3I divided by Atlas has arrived to set ablaze. But 3I divided by Atlas did not follow the script. It arrived on the cosmic stage and, with a silent, ghostly grace, proceeded to shred the rulebook page by page. This is not a subtle deviation, a minor footnote in the annals of astronomy. It is a profound and direct contradiction of the foundational law we have just established. Its actions constitute a form of celestial heresy. Let us trace its path to fully appreciate the scale of its transgression. We established the tripwire, the frost line, as the place of awakening, located in the relative warmth of the inner solar system, near the orbit of Mars. This is where the sun's power becomes sufficient to stir the sleeping giants. 3I, divided by Atlas, however, glided past this boundary in complete silence. It crossed the vast gulf to the orbit of Jupiter, the colossal king of our solar system, and still it remained dormant, a dark and silent silhouette against the stars. It continued outward on its inbound journey, a path that is in itself a rarity, and soared past the magnificent rings of Saturn, venturing deeper into the realm of profound cold. And it was here, in this desolate frozen wilderness far beyond the established frontier of activity, that 3I divided by Atlas decided to wake up. To place this in perspective, imagine standing on Earth and feeling the warmth of the sun on your face. Now, imagine traveling to Saturn. From that vantage point, the sun would appear 90 times smaller, its energy reduced to a mere 1% of what we receive. It is no longer a life-giving star, but a distant, brilliant diamond, its power to heat and sublimate ice all but extinguished. To find a water-rich comet bursting into life out here is the equivalent of walking into the deepest, coldest industrial freezer on Earth and finding a solid block of ice spontaneously boiling. It is an event that should not happen. The energy budget simply does not add up. The faint, ghostly photons of sunlight reaching 3I divided by Atlas at that distance are like trying to melt a glacier with a single candle. The laws of thermodynamics, as we apply them to our own comets, are clear. This level of activity, driven by this minuscule amount of energy, is impossible. So, the book of rules we so carefully authored by observing our native comets has been proven to be, at best, a local edition, a guide that is only valid within the familiar confines of our own cosmic neighborhood. 3I divided by Atlas did not just bend a rule. It revealed that a rule we thought was universal is in fact merely a suggestion. This single, irrefutable observation activity in a place of impossible cold forces us down a new and exhilarating path of inquiry. It means the driving force behind this comet's magnificent display cannot be the sun alone. There must be another mechanism at play, another engine running deep within its alien heart, or a fundamental property of its substance that makes it exquisitely sensitive to the faintest of stellar whispers. The impossible location of its awakening is not just a strange detail. It is the primary clue. It is the thread that, if we pull it carefully, may unravel the entire, extraordinary story of where this visitor came from and how it came to be. This is no longer a realm of inference or hypothesis. We now enter the domain of direct, irrefutable observation. The story transitions from a question of where this anomaly is occurring to the even more profound question of what precisely is happening. To answer this, humanity turned its most powerful eye toward the darkness, a technological marvel capable of seeing the unseen and deciphering the chemical whispers of the cosmos, the James Webb Space Telescope. With its exquisite sensitivity, Webb did not just look at 3I divided by Atlas, it stared into the very heart of this cosmic phantom, analyzing the faint, ghostly light that filtered through its burgeoning atmosphere, its coma. It was searching for chemical fingerprints, the unique spectral signatures that molecules leave behind when they interact with light. And the fingerprint it found was not subtle. It was not a faint trace or an ambiguous signal. It was the unmistakable, overwhelming, and thunderously clear signature of water. But it was the sheer scale, the sheer volume of this discovery that transformed a scientific curiosity into a profound cosmological statement. The data, once calibrated and confirmed, revealed a torrent. 3I, divided by Atlas, was found to be exhaling pure water vapor into the void at a rate of approximately 40 kilograms every single second. Allow that number to settle in the mind. 40 kilograms is the weight of a large bag of cement, a small person being converted into vapor and blasted into space with each tick of a clock. This is not a gentle mist. It is a relentless, silent geyser. To frame it in more terrestrial terms, the comet is releasing enough water to fill a small swimming pool every single hour. It is a river born from an unseen source, flowing not across a landscape of rock and soil, but into the perfect emptiness of interplanetary space. And this river is made of the most precious and significant molecule in our search for life beyond Earth. Here, in the frigid darkness, the very solvent of biology, the substance that carved our canyons and fills our oceans, the molecule that constitutes the majority of our own bodies, is gushing forth from an alien world. This discovery is a paradox wrapped in an enigma. It is a flood of life-giving water in a place so cold it should lock that water away in a state of eternal crystalline stillness. The presence of this much active water, driven by an unknown engine so far from the sun, is not just a clue, it is a fundamental challenge. It tells us that the ingredients for worlds like ours may not just be passively present in the dark, but can be dynamically, powerfully, and inexplicably active in the most unexpected of places. This impossible river deepens the mystery, for it demands a source, an engine, a mechanism that lies completely outside the established physics of our own solar system. But a river is more than just its volume. It is defined by what it carries. The water flowing from a mountain spring tells a different story than the water of a silty delta. And so, having witnessed this impossible torrent of water, the next, more profound task was to analyze its composition, to taste its essence from a distance of millions of kilometers. For within that vaporous exhalation lies a message, a chemical story written in a molecular language. And when we deciphered that language, the mystery of 3I, divided by Atlas, deepened from a physical paradox into a fundamental, almost biological question of origin and identity. Every object in the cosmos, carries a chemical fingerprint of its birthplace. Just as the geology of a continent dictates the mineral content of its rivers, the specific elemental mix of a primordial nebula is forever imprinted on the comets, asteroids, and planets that form within it. By analyzing the light that passes through a comet's coma, a science known as spectroscopy, we can identify these chemical signatures with breathtaking precision. It is the cosmic equivalent of DNA testing. We expected 3I divided by Atlas to have a distinct fingerprint, a different dialect of the chemical language we know. What we found was something else entirely. It was a language that seemed to be missing entire letters, while overemphasizing others in ways that defy the known grammar of cosmochemistry. The first alien word in its message was carbon dioxide. While its presence was expected, its sheer abundance was not. The data revealed a coma extraordinarily rich in CO2, suggesting a composition fundamentally different from the typical comets of our own Oort cloud. It was the first hint that this object was not built from the same standard set of blueprints. But this was merely a difference in dialect. The truly paradigm-shattering discovery came when astronomers looked deeper, past the common molecules, into the trace elements vaporized from the nucleus, the metals. In the violent furnace of a star's heart and the cataclysm of its death, heavy elements are forged. Among these are nickel and iron. In the grand cosmic scheme, these two elements are almost inseparable companions, cosmic twins forged in the same stellar crucible. They are iron peak elements, meaning they are the final, most stable products of nuclear fusion in massive stars. When these stars explode as supernovae, they seed the surrounding space with a cloud of newly minted elements, and in this cloud, the ratio of iron to nickel is relatively fixed and predictable. Wherever you find one, you invariably find the other. This is a fundamental rule of galactic chemistry. So, as the telescopes gathered the faint light of 3I divided by Atlas, they found the clear, unambiguous spectral line of vaporized nickel in its coma. And then, the scientific community held its collective breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. They searched the spectrum for the much stronger, much more obvious signature of iron that must, absolutely must, be there alongside it. And they found nothing. Silence. An inexplicable, deafening absence. The iron was missing. This is a finding of such profound strangeness that it borders on the absurd. It is like finding a single, perfectly preserved human handprint in ancient stone, but with the thumb inexplicably absent. It is like listening to a grand symphony that contains all the notes of the orchestra except for a single, fundamental chord that underpins the entire composition. The universe, as we know it, does not make nickel without making iron. To find one without the other in a primordial body is a direct challenge to our models of stellar nucleosynthesis and nebula chemistry. It suggests that 3I divided by Atlas was born in a region of space so chemically bizarre, so unlike our own, that these cosmic twins were somehow separated at birth. And the chemical anomalies did not stop there. Further analysis revealed a comparative poverty of other familiar compounds, such as cyanogen, a simple molecule of carbon and nitrogen that is a common tracer in the comets of our solar system. The fingerprint was becoming clearer with each observation. High in carbon dioxide, present in nickel, missing in iron, low in cyanogen. This is not a slight variation. This is not a regional accent. This is the chemical signature of a world forged in a completely different kind of factory, under a completely different set of engineering specifications. The message carried on that impossible river of water was now clear. 3I divided by Atlas is not just a foreigner. It is a creature from a fundamentally different chemistry, a different genesis. Its very substance tells a story of a parent star, a planetary disk, and a formation history so alien that it breaks the most basic rules we thought governed the construction of worlds. The evidence is no longer just behavioral. It is now intrinsic, written into the very atoms of its being. And this strange, alien fingerprint, delivered to us from across the interstellar void, now poses the ultimate question: what kind of star system could possibly create such a thing? And then there was the matter of its motion, or rather, the motion of the material erupting from it. For a comet is not just a nucleus and a coma. It is a dynamic object, a celestial weather vane that should, by all rights, align itself with the prevailing winds of the solar system. This alignment is one of the most fundamental and visually intuitive aspects of cometary science. As a comet is sculpted by the two constant outward forces from the sun, the stream of charged particles in the solar wind and the gentle, persistent pressure of sunlight itself, its tails are a direct and unambiguous indicator of the sun's direction. They are like a flag in the wind, always pointing away from the source of the breeze. Whether the comet is traveling towards the sun or away from it, its tails will always trail behind it on its journey inward and stream ahead of it on its journey outward. The rule is absolute. The tails point away from the Sunday. It is a law written in the language of light and plasma, a direct consequence of the overwhelming power a star exerts on its immediate environment. Yet again, 3I divided by Atlas presented an image of defiance. Observations revealed a feature that seemed to violate this most basic of principles. In addition to the expected tail streaming away from the sun, there appeared to be a jet, a subtle but distinct stream of material that pointed forward along its orbital path, seemingly back toward the very star whose forces it should be fleeing. This feature, sometimes referred to as an anti-tail, or more accurately a forward-pointing jet, is an act of profound physical rebellion. It is the celestial equivalent of a ship's wake forming not behind it, but in front of its bow as it sails through the water. It suggests that the forces emanating from the comet's nucleus are not uniform, that this is not a simple, passive object being passively sculpted by the Sunday foe. Instead, it hints at a complex active geology. It implies there are specific vents or geysers on its surface, firing with such directional force that they can, at least for a time and from our perspective, create a stream of matter that resists the overwhelming pressure of the Sunday. This strange behavior completes the trifecta of evidence. First, we witnessed when it became active, in a place of impossible cold. Second, we analyzed what it was made of, a chemistry so alien it breaks the known rules of cosmic element distribution. And now, we see how it behaves. With a dynamic that defies the very physics of its interaction with the Sunday, these are not speculative theories or ambiguous data points. They are three distinct, empirical, and deeply strange observations. 3I divided by Atlas is not just a visitor. It is a living puzzle, an active paradox. And with these three pillars of evidence firmly established, the scientific quest must now shift from observation to explanation. The stage is set. The mystery is clear. We are now forced to climb a ladder of hypotheses, from the most conventional to the most extraordinary, in a daring attempt to find a framework, any framework, that can account for this beautiful, impossible messenger from the stars. The scientific mind, when confronted with a profound mystery, does not immediately leap to extraordinary conclusions. It begins its ascent on the lowest rung of the ladder of explanation, guided by a principle of elegant simplicity, a concept often known as Occam's razor. The simplest solution is usually the correct one. And so, in our quest to understand the impossible breadth of 3I divided by Atlas, we must first exhaust the most rational, the most conventional, and the most logical of possibilities. The first and most obvious hypothesis addresses the central paradox of its activity directly. Perhaps the problem is not with our understanding of physics, but with our initial assumption about its composition. We have been working from the premise that 3I divided by Atlas is, like the comets of our own solar system, a body whose activity is primarily governed by the sublimation of water ice. But what if it is not? What if its engine is not water, but a far more volatile substance, a type of ice that can turn to gas at much, much lower temperatures? The leading candidates for such a substance are frozen carbon monoxide, CO, and carbon dioxide, CO2, often called dry ice. These materials are common in the universe and are known to exist in comets. Crucially, their frost lines are located much farther out in the solar system. While water needs the relative warmth of the inner planets to awaken, CO and CO2 can begin to fizz and steam in the crushing cold of the outer realms, where 3I divided by Atlas first began its display. This hypothesis is beautiful in its simplicity. It resolves the primary mystery activity in a place of impossible cold without needing to invent new physics. It suggests that 3I divided by Atlas is not breaking the rules, but is simply playing a different game, one governed by a more volatile chemical engine. And for a moment, this explanation seems to fit the evidence perfectly. The James Webb Space Telescope, after all, did detect an unusually high abundance of carbon dioxide in the comet's coma, a finding that appears to be the smoking gun for this very idea. It seems a neat, tidy, and satisfying solution, but the universe is rarely so simple. And as we examine this elegant hypothesis more closely, holding it up to the full spectrum of evidence, cracks begin to appear in its beautiful facade. The first and most devastating blow comes from the primary evidence itself, the river of water. If the comet's activity were truly driven by the sublimation of CO or CO2, then those gases should be the dominant components in the coma. They would be the engine, the driving force, and water vapor would be a secondary, almost incidental byproduct, dragged from the nucleus by the more powerful eruption of the volatile ices. But this is not what Webb observed. It saw a torrent of H2O, a prodigious, almost unbelievable quantity of it. The volume of water is so immense that it cannot be explained away as a secondary effect. The comet's breath is overwhelmingly, fundamentally made of water. The supposed engine of CO2 is present, yes, but the exhaust is screaming a different story. The second problem is one of omission. The volatile ice hypothesis provides a potential answer for when the comet turned on, but it offers absolutely no explanation for its alien chemical fingerprint. The bizarre and unprecedented anomaly of finding nickel without its cosmic twin iron is a puzzle of nucleosynthesis and nebular chemistry. It is a question about the comet's very origins, written in its atomic structure. The thermal behavior of its surface ices has no bearing on this fundamental, intrinsic property. The hypothesis simply ignores this crucial piece of the puzzle, leaving the most alien aspect of 3I divided by Atlas completely unexplained. And so, with a sense of intellectual duty, we must let go of this first, simple solution. It is a necessary and logical first step on our journey, but it is not the destination. It accounts for one piece of the mystery, but leaves the larger, more profound questions unanswered. The evidence demands a more sophisticated, a more nuanced explanation. The truth, it seems, does not lie on this first rung. We must let it go and continue our climb. Having found the simplest explanation wanting, we are compelled to ascend to the next rung of the ladder. This is where the intellectual journey becomes more demanding, but also far more rewarding. If the direct sublimation of ice from a solid nucleus cannot account for the sheer volume of water we are witnessing, then perhaps we are looking at the wrong mechanism entirely. Perhaps we are witnessing not a simple one-step process, but a far more subtle and elegant two-step cascade of events. This leads us to a newer, more intricate hypothesis, one born from the very paradox that shattered the first. This idea proposes that 3I divided by Atlas is not simply breathing water vapor from its surface. Instead, it is actively shedding its skin. The process begins with the comet's primary engine, which could still be the sublimation of the more volatile ices like carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide. As these gases erupt from the nucleus, even feebly under the faint sunlight, they do not just escape into space alone. They act as a propellant, a carrier gas, forcefully lifting and ejecting vast quantities of other materials from the surface. And crucially, this material is not just inert rock dust. It is a fine-grained powder of microscopic, water ice-coated dust particles. Think of it as a cloud of cosmic frost. In this first step, the comet is not creating a river of water vapor, but a vast, expanding nebula of tiny frozen grains around itself. It is seeding its immediate environment with its own substance. And it is here, in this dispersed, ghostly cloud, that the second act of the drama unfolds. Each of these millions upon millions of tiny ice dust grains now presents a much larger surface area to the faint sunlight than the solid nucleus ever could. Imagine a single large block of ice versus that same block shattered into a fine powder. The powder will melt infinitely faster because the light can touch it from all sides at once. This is precisely what is happening in the coma of 3I divided by Atlas. These microscopic grains, now floating freely in space, become individual targets for the sun's photons. They absorb the faint energy far more efficiently than the solid monolithic surface of the comet ever could. And so, it is these grains that begin to sublimate violently, releasing their water content directly into the surrounding space. The comet is, in essence, outsourcing its own activity. It uses one mechanism to create a cloud, and then allows the faint sunlight to turn that cloud into a massive source of water vapor. This two-step model is intellectually beautiful because it elegantly solves the energy budget problem. The faint sunlight is no longer being asked to boil a glacier, it is simply warming a mist. The mechanism also explains the prodigious amount of water observed by the James Webb telescope. The river of water is not flowing from a single source on the nucleus, but from a trillion microscopic sources in the vast coma surrounding it. It is a distributed, highly efficient system for turning ice into gas, a physical process that is both clever and entirely new to our observations of cometary behavior. It paints a picture of three. I divided by Atlas not as a simple inert body being passively eroded by the sun, but as a complex geological machine with a surprisingly sophisticated method for interacting with its environment. It is a creature that has learned how to make the most of the faintest light in the darkest of places. However, as elegant as this hypothesis is, it remains incomplete. While it provides a brilliant and compelling physical mechanism for the water torrent, it, like the simpler theory before it, stands utterly silent on the most alien aspect of our visitor, its intrinsic, fundamental, and deeply strange chemical fingerprint. The mystery of the missing iron remains untouched. This beautiful mechanical solution still does not tell us anything about the forge in which this strange machine was built. And so, while we have made a significant step up the ladder of understanding, we have not yet reached the top. We have found a plausible how, but we are still left searching for the ultimate why. And so, the ladder of explanation leads us to a place of profound shift in perspective. We have exhausted the purely mechanical explanations for the comet's present behavior. The answers, it seems, do not lie in the physics of its current journey, but in the deep, ancient history of its creation. We must now move beyond how this strange engine operates, and dare to ask where such an engine could possibly have been built. This is the third and highest rung of scientific inquiry, where we graduate from physics to cosmology, from mechanics to genesis. The new hypothesis, therefore, is not about sublimation or dust dynamics. It is about the very nature of the stellar nursery that gave birth to 3I divided by Atlas. It proposes that the comet's bizarre chemical fingerprint is not an anomaly it developed, but an inheritance it was given. Its strangeness is not a behavior, it is its identity. It is a direct, unaltered sample of a primordial cloud with a chemistry fundamentally alien to our own. This idea reframes the entire problem. The missing iron is no longer a strange quirk of the comet's current state. It is a foundational clue about the star system it came from. Let us return to that central baffling fact: the presence of nickel without its cosmic twin, iron. To separate these two elements, which are forged together in the hearts of dying stars and scattered as one into the cosmos, requires an environment of extreme and specific conditions. This is not something that happens by accident. The hypothesis, then, is that 3I divided by Atlas was born in such a place. Perhaps it formed in a protoplanetary disk orbiting perilously close to a massive, intensely hot and violent star, a blue giant, for instance. In such a fierce environment, bathed in radiation far more intense than our own sun ever produced, the chemistry of the disk would be warped and sculpted. Certain elements could be preferentially vaporized and blown away by powerful stellar winds, while others, more refractory, remained. It's a scenario of cosmic alchemy, where a star's intense energy could, in theory, create chemical segregation on a vast scale, producing building blocks for worlds that are intrinsically lacking in certain fundamental elements. Alternatively, the primordial cloud from which this star system formed may itself have been unusual, perhaps seeded by the explosion of a rare type of supernova that produces an atypical ratio of heavy elements. This would mean that every object born in that system, every planet, every asteroid, every comet would carry this same strange iron pore signature. They would all be children of a different cosmic chemistry. This hypothesis is powerful because for the first time it has the potential to explain everything. It provides a single, unifying origin story for all of the comet's bizarre traits. The alien fingerprint is its birthright. Its unusual composition, rich in some materials and poor in others, could also explain its strange physical properties, potentially leading to the formation of the highly sensitive, microscopic ice grains needed for the two-step sublimation mechanism. It transforms 3I divided by Atlas from a mere curiosity into a precious scientific artifact. It is no longer just a wanderer. It is a geological ambassador, a core sample drilled from the heart of a foreign genesis and delivered, against all odds, directly to our doorstep. It carries the truth of another world's creation frozen within it, and the message it brings is one of immense and humbling diversity. It tells us that the blueprint for our own solar system is just one of countless architectural plans the universe employs to build worlds. This explanation that 3I divided by Atlas is a natural artifact from a chemically alien solar system is the most robust, the most scientifically plausible, and the most widely accepted framework we have. It is the highest rung on the ladder of conventional science, and from here we have a breathtaking view of the universe's sheer creative diversity. But the human mind is a restless thing, and when confronted with a mystery of this magnitude, one that so consistently and elegantly defies our expectations, there is a tendency to feel a kind of intellectual vertigo. It is a feeling that perhaps even our most exotic natural explanations are not exotic enough. And so, we arrive at the final, most precarious, and most speculative step on the ladder, a step that leaves the firm ground of established science and ventures into the boundless ether of possibility. What if this object is not a natural creation at all? This is not a hypothesis in the scientific sense, for it is not, at present, testable. It is rather a thought experiment, a question whispered in the quietest corners of astrophysics, a ghost in the machine of our data. The question is this: when an object's behavior and composition are so utterly unique, so statistically improbable based on our current understanding of the cosmos, at what point do we begin to consider that it may not be a product of blind, natural forces, but of deliberate, intelligent design? We have been here before. Oumuamua, the first interstellar visitor, with its strange, tumbling motion and its mysterious non-gravitational acceleration, provoked this very same question. Its bizarre properties led some respected scientists to publicly speculate that it might be an artifact, a piece of extraterrestrial technology, perhaps a solar sail or a probe from a long-dead civilization. That speculation was never proven, and Oumuamua is gone forever, its secrets intact. And now, 3I divided by Atlas arrives, presenting a completely different set of impossible behaviors, and the ghost of that question returns. To be absolutely, unequivocally clear, there is not a single piece of direct evidence to support the conclusion that 3I divided by Atlas is an artificial object. The scientific consensus is, and must be, that it is a natural phenomenon, however strange. Science builds its house with the bricks of evidence, not the mortar of speculation. And yet, the thought experiment persists because of what 3I divided by Atlas represents, an object that, at every turn, seems to be a statistical outlier of the highest order. Its impossible activity, its unique chemical fingerprint, its defiant dynamics, each is a mystery in itself. Found together in a single object, they create a confluence of anomalies that strains the limits of our current models. The purpose of this final, speculative step is not to declare that 3I divided by Atlas is an alien probe. Rather, its purpose is to acknowledge the sheer power of the mystery it presents. Its existence forces us to place all possibilities on the table, even the most extraordinary ones, if only to appreciate the full scope of the cosmic puzzle we are facing. The fact that a single, silent wanderer from the darkness can push the conversation of science to these dizzying heights is, in itself, a testament to its profound importance. It is a measure of how profoundly this visitor has shaken our foundations, forcing us to ask the most fundamental question of all: what else is possible in this universe? In the end, after the frantic collection of data, after the rigorous debate of hypotheses, after we have climbed the ladder of explanation to its very edge, we are left in a profound and contemplative silence, watching as 3I divided by Atlas continues its inexorable journey back into the interstellar dark. It will never return. Its brief, luminous passage through our home was a fleeting, once-in-an-eternity event. And as it recedes, we are left to grapple not just with the scientific data it provided, but with the deeper, more philosophical meaning of its visitation. For regardless of its ultimate nature, whether a bizarre natural comet or a far stranger possibility, 3I divided by Atlas has undeniably fulfilled the role of a messenger. It did not arrive bearing greetings or warnings etched onto golden plates. Its message was not written in mathematics or language, but in the far more ancient and universal script of physics and chemistry. And the message is perhaps the most important one that a young, intelligent species, just awakening to its cosmic context, can possibly receive. The message is this: your reality is not the only reality. The rules you have so carefully derived from observing your own celestial backyard, the elegant laws that govern the formation of your planets and the behavior of your comets, are not universal truths. They are local bylaws. They are the constitution of a single, isolated island in a vast, uncharted ocean of possibilities. For millennia, humanity has looked to the heavens and seen a reflection of itself, imposing its own logic, its own myths, and eventually its own science upon the cosmos, assuming a kind of universal uniformity. 3I divided by Atlas arrives as a gentle but firm refutation of this assumption. Its very existence is a testament to the fact that the universe is not a monolithic empire governed by a single, rigid set of edicts. Instead, it is a sprawling, wildly diverse federation of star systems, each with its own unique history, its own distinct elemental inheritance, and its own local way of doing things. The way worlds are built around our sun is just one way. The story of our genesis is just one story. This messenger from a foreign star delivers a truth of immense and liberating power. It tells us that out there, in the sea of 100 billion suns within our galaxy, there may be worlds forged in chemical environments we can barely imagine, orbiting stars of a character we have never seen, and governed by a set of physical conditions that would make our own solar system seem like a quaint and simple province. It is a message that simultaneously deepens our cosmic loneliness by highlighting how unique and isolated our own home might be, and at the same time fuels our cosmic hope by revealing the sheer, unbridled creativity of a universe that is far more inventive and surprising than we ever dared to believe. And so, every encounter with a profound cosmic mystery like 3 divided by Atlas becomes more than just an exploration of the universe out there. It inevitably becomes an exploration of the universe in here. This visitor, this silent, ghostly wanderer, is not just a scientific object to be measured, catalogued, and eventually explained away. It is also a mirror, vast and cold and unflinchingly honest. And when we gaze into it, what we see reflected back is not the comet's true nature, but the stark and beautiful outline of our own ignorance. For centuries, we have been building a small, warm fire of knowledge in the midst of an infinite, dark forest. With each discovery, we believe we have pushed the darkness back a little further. But an object like 3I divided by Atlas does not simply add another log to our fire. It is like a momentary flash of lightning that illuminates the entire forest, revealing for just an instant the true, breathtaking scale of the darkness we inhabit. It shows us that the territory of the unknown is not a finite frontier we are slowly conquering, but an infinite expanse that grows larger with every new discovery. The arrival of this messenger is a humbling event. It is a quiet but powerful reminder that our science, for all its predictive power and technological marvel, is still in its infancy. It is a reminder that we are a species that has only just opened its eyes, and that our current understanding of the cosmos may one day seem as quaint and as primitive as the celestial maps of our ancient ancestors. There is a profound beauty in this realization. It strips away the hubris of certainty and replaces it with the far more powerful and enduring engine of wonder. The existence of 3I divided by Atlas tells us that the universe is not a closed book that we are nearing the end of. It is a library of infinite, unwritten volumes, and we have only just learned how to read the title of the first page. This, then, is the true gift of such a visitor. It is not in the answers it provides, but in the quality of the new questions. It forces us to ask questions that are bolder, deeper, and more fundamental than the ones we knew how to pose before its arrival. It elevates our inquiry, pushing us beyond the mechanics of our own solar system and into the grander arena of galactic possibility. It came from the darkness, a brief and incandescent question mark against the canvas of our sky. And now it recedes, returning to that same infinite darkness, its impossible story told not in words, but in the silent language of light and water. It leaves behind a wake, not of disturbed dust, but of disturbed certainty. Its passage reminds us that the universe is under no obligation to be simple, nor to conform to the neat and tidy models we construct within our minds. And so when we, as individuals and as a species, cast our gaze upward into the stardusted night, what is it that we are truly searching for? Is it the definitive answers to the ancient questions of our existence? Or is it perhaps the discovery of even grander, more beautiful questions? Perhaps the outward journey into the cosmos is, and always has been, the most profound way of embarking on the inward journey, of discovering the infinite and unexplored universes that lie dormant within ourselves.